Is Putin going to stop in Ukraine?
I don't believe he is, sir. I think he'll
What do you
go
think?
until.
What do you think, Secretary? Is he going to stop?
Remains to be seen, Senator.
Well, he says he's not. I mean, this is the 30th all over. It doesn't remain to be seen. He tells everybody around what he wants to do. Are you familiar with his military buildup in terms of armaments? It's well beyond what we need to do to take Ukraine. Listen, I like.
Señores, Donald Trump debe de estar agotado de tantas derrotas. Últimamente pierde en todos lados. Pierde en los tribunales, pierde en la opinión pública y ahora está dentro de su propio partido. Cada día su influencia se desvanece un poco más. Y como si todo esto no fuese lo suficiente, los mismos republicanos en el Congreso ya están desafiando tanto su presupuesto como sus aranceles y ahora incluso su política exterior. Lo que uno de ellos acaba de decir públicamente, amigos, ha puesto a Trump y a toda la Casa Blanca en modo pánico absoluto. Sean bienvenidos a Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Señores, hoy veremos cómo el senador Lindsey Graham acaba prácticamente de confrontarse en el Congreso a Pete Hegseth. Así que los invito a que se queden hasta el final de este video, señores. Veremos detalles muy interesantes. Pues señores, el republicano que está sacando de quicio a Trump, y ya viene haciéndolo un par de semanas, es ni más ni menos que Lindsey Graham. Antes de irnos exactamente con él, quiero comenzar con otro senador que, a diferencia de Lindsey Graham, realmente se ha plantado frente a la locura de Trump. Y lógicamente estoy hablando de Chris Murphy, el cual no se guardó absolutamente nada a la hora de hablar de política exterior trumpista. Escuchemos esto.
I'm going to be forcing votes in the Senate on two major arms sales to Qatar and the UAE because I refuse to accept the corruption of American foreign policy. Let me tell you what I'm doing and why it's important. So, as you have probably heard, several Middle East nations are essentially putting money in Trump's pocket in exchange often for the transfer of national security secrets from the United States to these countries. We've never seen this before. Donald Trump and his family going around the Middle East and asking these countries to pay him personally in order to get favorable treatment. We can't accept this as a country. We can't accept this as a Congress. And so every member of the Senate has an ability to force a debate and a vote on major arms sales. And so I'm going to force a debate and a vote on two pending arms sales to two of the countries that right now are willing to pay off Donald Trump. Now, our relationships with Qatar and the UAE, they're complicated, but they are very important. And our message is a pretty simple one. If you commit to stopping putting money in the pockets personally of Donald Trump and his family, then we can move forward on these arms sales. But so long as Qatar is willing to gift Donald Trump a private plane, so long as the UAE is still willing to invest $2 billion in Donald Trump's crypto scam, then we can't do business as usual. Because if we were to approve these arms sales amidst this corruption, we would be normalizing a president of the United States using the massive power of American foreign policy in order to enrich himself. So this is an opportunity for the Senate to stand up and say, no, we are not going to allow the president of the United States to use American foreign policy to make himself rich. This vote will come as early as next week, but my hope is that Republicans and Democrats can stand together, stand up for a very simple message. That we will not permit the corruption of American foreign policy.
Y es que Murphy lo ha dejado muy claro. Este gobierno no existe para servir al pueblo ni para proteger los intereses democráticos. No, señores. Ellos están ahí para hacer lo que a Trump se le ocurra en el momento que quiera. Están ahí para beneficiar a los millonarios, los ultramillonarios. Y claro, poder congraciarse con dictadores internacionales. Y como no, pues todo esto incluye a Vladimir Putin. Últimamente, Trump ha hecho todo tipo de concesiones a favor del líder ruso. Y aunque parecía, ¿no?, que después de tantas humillaciones públicas, Donald Trump tal vez iba a cambiar de actitud, pues no, amigos, nada ha cambiado. Sigue en la misma línea. Lindsey Graham, quien esta vez, para sorpresa de muchos, decidió plantar cara durante una sesión en el Senado, pues confrontó públicamente a Pete Hegseth. Y señores, la situación se volvió tensa. Veamos esto.
What you're trying to do is hire people based on merit, right?
Yes, sir.
You could care less if they're libertarian, vegetarian, Democrat, Republican, as long as they can do the job?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. More people are joining the military now than any time in recent memory, right?
Yes, sir.
So the situation described by Senator Murray is not being viewed by other Americans because they're signing up in droves.
Senator, there's been a historic surge.
You know why? Because they think you're a winner. They think you're going to lead. They think you're going to have their back. That's why they're signing up. Keep doing what you're doing. Now, do you agree that the world kind of miscalculated Hitler in the 20s and 30s?
Certainly did not understand the scope of the threat. Yes,
Like the
Senator.
guy wrote a book, I want to kill all the Jews, and nobody believed him. You remember that? General Kane, is that a fair statement that the military-industrial complex of the 20s and 30s really didn't miscalculated Hitler?
Yes, sir.
The danger of that is like 50 million people get killed. So let's don't do that now. As to Iran, they say they want to kill all the Jews. Do you agree with them?
I believe they mean what they chant. Yes, Senator.
Do you agree with that, General Kane?
Sir, I think they've got some agendas for sure to.
Well, is that
advance
agenda to use a nuclear weapon against Israel?
Sir, I think they would potentially.
They had a nuclear weapon, would they use it against Israel? In your professional military judgment.
Sir, I think they'd use it to pressure Israel. I don't know whether they would use it.
Well, is it 50-50, 60-40, 70-10? What is it?
Sir, I don't know what the percentage is.
Well, you can't be wrong, can you? What does Israel think?
Sir, I think they think they would potentially.
What do you
use
think,
nuclear-
Mr. Secretary? If they
I
had a
think-
nuclear weapon, would they use it to wipe out Israel?
I think Israel believes, and quite understandably,
Do you believe that?
that it is an existential
Do
threat
you
to their
believe
existence.
that?
Hold on, and then in the hands of the wrong Iranian, a cleric or a radical, that they would seek to
Well,
use
is this a radical cleric that exists there today?
Well, as of
If
right
he's
now,
not,
yes.
who the hell would be? So I'm trying to get everybody to think, let's don't do what we did in the 30s. They're going to use a nuclear weapon if they get it. Are they trying to build a nuclear weapon versus a peaceful nuclear power program, Mr. Secretary? Have the Iranians been trying to build a nuke?
There are plenty of indications that they have been moving their way towards something that would look a lot like a nuclear weapon.
Does China intend to take Taiwan by force if necessary?
We don't believe they've made that decision yet, but certainly if you look at their exercises that they're performing in that area, they
What do
look
you
a lot
think,
like
General
what that would
Kane?
look
Do you
like.
think
Y miren, no es que quiera felicitar a Lindsey Graham, ¿no? Porque no se lo merece. Pero lo que dijo fue acertado. Lo que está haciendo el gobierno de Trump con el tema de Rusia es simplemente rendirse. Esto es un apaciguamiento, ¿no? Puro y duro. Algo muy cobarde y muy peligroso. Pete Hegseth dice que no sabe qué puede hacer con Putin. Amigos, todos sabemos lo que busca Putin. Y si no lo saben, es porque o eres ignorante o simplemente no estás en tus cabales. En el caso de Pete Hegseth, probablemente sean las dos cosas, ¿no? Pero bueno, Lindsey Graham no se quedó solo en palabras, porque ha presentado un proyecto de ley que busca imponer sanciones duras contra Rusia. Y eso, amigos, les aseguro que tiene desesperada la Casa Blanca. Miren esto. La Casa Blanca presiona en secreto al Senado para que debilite las sanciones a Rusia. El equipo de Trump está tratando de convencer a Lindsey Graham para que éste suavice su propuesta de sanciones. O sea que en lugar de castigar seriamente a Rusia por el tema de la invasión, etcétera, etcétera, al parecer Trump quiere arreglar su relación con Putin. Y cómo no, ¿no? Quitándole los dientes a este proyecto de ley. Los asesores de Trump están presionando para que el lenguaje de este proyecto cambie, ¿no? De que deberá sancionar a podrá sancionar. Un simple cambio de palabras, pero lo cual pues lo huele prácticamente inútil. Los expertos del Congreso, señores, lo han dicho. Si se hace este cambio, el proyecto queda completamente debilitado, porque Trump ya tendría la facultad de imponer sanciones solo si quiere, pero claramente él lo quiere. Aún así, Lindsey Graham por ahora no ha cedido. Dijo que seguirá trabajando con la Casa Blanca y con los demócratas para avanzar con el proyecto, ¿no? Lógicamente se negó a dar más detalles. Y pues, mientras tanto, Trump ya salió a decir que no deberían avanzar sin su autorización. Ahora, también quiero dejar algo muy claro, que es como el tema con Musk. No estoy diciendo que Lindsey Graham sea un héroe por rechazar a Trump. De hecho, no se merece ni un poco de crédito. Así que mejor hablemos de su oponente en las elecciones para el Senado. Se trata de la doctora Annie Andrews, la cual estuvo un poco haciendo entrevistas con MSNBC. Y bueno, escuchemos para conocerla un poco mejor.
This is a kid with cancer, one of the diseases the NIH doesn't have the funding to study anymore. And this is a kid who's been shot, which despite being the #1 cause of death for children in America, is no longer classified as a public health crisis. And this kid, and there's really no other way to say this, is quite literally full of And this is an adult who is also completely and unequivocally full of
Dr. Annie Andrews made a hard launch with that now viral campaign ad announcing her run to challenge South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham in 2026. But the road ahead is unlikely to be easy. Graham was first elected to the Senate in 2002, and this week the Cook Political Report is marking his seat as safe for Republicans. Dr. Annie Andrews joins us now. Dr. Andrews, thanks so much. So, as you've just heard, this seat has been held by Republicans for decades. What makes you think you can flip it now?
Well, I'm a mom and a pediatrician, not a career politician. Lindsey Graham, as you just said, has been in the Senate for 22 years. That's half of my lifetime. And over that time period, he's changed his position on nearly every issue. I meant what I said in that video, and I will stick to that. People in South Carolina are ready for a leader who will fight for them, not someone who will just do whatever it takes to hold on to power. Democrats and Republicans alike are tired of the chaos and corruption that we see from career politicians like Lindsey Graham.
Doctor, you have a huge campaign fundraising void that you're going to have to fill to be competitive. Last time, Jamie Harrison raised around $100 million. It was the most expensive election, I believe, in South Carolina history. So you're going to have an astronomical amount of fundraising to do. But at the same time, Lindsey Graham is vulnerable. He is less popular. He's less popular than other Republicans. What is with his sliding unpopularity in South Carolina, where he is, his approval rating is at around 34%, and how do you plan to capitalize on that?
Yes, Lindsey Graham is as vulnerable as he's ever been because he's as unpopular as he's ever been because he's as corrupt as he's ever been. He's been in the Senate for 22 years, and in that time, he has failed to deliver in any meaningful way for the folks in South Carolina. He has enabled every chaotic thing that is coming out of this current Trump administration, and it is directly harming voters in South Carolina, whether it's our auto industry, South Carolina farmers, South Carolina small business owners. People are feeling it. He's willing to take food off of kids' plates, gut our nation's Medicaid program, and watch prices spiral out of control, all so he can deliver tax cuts to billionaires. And that's not serving the people of South Carolina. I know people are ready for a change. That's why our announcement was so successful. And if people want to learn more about my campaign, they need to go to DrAnnieAndrews.com.
Dr. Andrews, I want to pick up on something that's in your bio on X. You say no corporate PACs. And we've seen some candidates who have had success with fundraising on a grassroots level. It's very hard in a state like South Carolina, as Elise was just mentioning. But I want to talk about how you run your campaign. What are you going to do on the ground that is going to be a grassroots-led campaign to rely on small donations when, as we just saw, you had a billionaire who basically took $270 million out of his own pocket to buy an American president and vows to probably do more so of that in the election cycle that you're going to be competing in?
That's right. I will take no corporate PAC money, and I'll do what I do every day as a pediatrician. I'm going to meet voters where they are. As a doctor, I sit down with worried parents and sick children every day. I listen to their concerns, and I come up with solutions to their problems. And that's exactly what I'm going to do out on the campaign trail. Being a doctor is not about red or blue, and this campaign is not about red or blue. It's about meeting people where they are. It's about inspiring hope for the folks of South Carolina who are tired.
Y es que, amigos, Lindsey Graham en el fondo es un veleta. Hoy dice una cosa, mañana hace otra. Nunca se planta del todo contra Trump. Cuando lo hace es porque pues le conviene políticamente, ¿no? Y eso, señores, es un oportunista sin espina dorsal. Lo peor es que ni siquiera lo quieren dentro del propio movimiento MAGA. ¿Por qué? Porque lo abuchean cada vez que aparece. O sea, él es republicano, pero ni siquiera los fanáticos de Trump lo respetan. Así que, pues Lindsey, tal vez pierdas tu curul, o tal vez sigas en el Senado sabiendo que nadie te quiere. Sinceramente, cualquiera de esas opciones me parece bien. Pero bueno, amigos, pasemos a hablar del siguiente tema. Toquemos un poco a fondo, ¿no? Lo de Los Ángeles. Y es que, ¿qué sucede cuando un presidente, ¿no?, utiliza a las Fuerzas Armadas no para proteger su país, sino que para intimidar a sus propios ciudadanos? Señores, el uso político del ejército de los Estados Unidos. Si es que en algún momento pensamos que esto solo llegaría a ocurrir en dictaduras, ¿no?, o un régimen autoritario, pues bueno, ahora estamos viendo señales muy preocupantes, ¿no? Algo muy similar está sucediendo en suelo estadounidense. La administración de Trump, como bien sabemos, activó a la Guardia Nacional, desplegó a los marines en Los Ángeles sin el consentimiento de los gobernadores locales, lo cual en los últimos días ha generado pues un debate muy acalorado, ¿no?, sobre el abuso de poder presidencial. Antes de que entremos en los detalles más profundos, quiero mostrarles un clip clave donde veremos al senador Tim Kaine, el cual pues ha expuesto su postura sobre este tema, ¿no? Y es muy interesante escucharlo. Veamos esto.
Senator Tim Kaine is here. Senator, what is happening in terms of oversight of this nearly unprecedented and historic use of a president over the wishes of a state governor, activating that state's National Guard, and then immobilizing 700 active duty Marines?
Nicole, this is hugely problematic. I think it's illegal, unprecedented, and I think it is a very dangerous priority, and I expressed that position in an Armed Services Committee hearing yesterday. The National Guard, let's start there. This is a partnership that goes back centuries between the president and governors and guardsmen and women. And the Guard is a partnership between presidents and governors. It's not a battering ram to be used against states. The Guard gets deployed when a governor asks for it, or sometimes the president will ask a governor to loan troops to an endeavor. I did that when I was governor of Virginia. I lent Virginia Guard members to assist President George W. Bush on border operations. But it's a cooperative arrangement, a partnership, not a tool and not a bludgeon. The president's use of it is escalatory. It was not asked for, in fact, objected to by the governor of California and the mayor. My friends in Los Angeles that I've reached out to, I said, are these protests generally peaceful with a few bad apples, or are they too violent and out of control? And they all came back and said, generally peaceful, a few bad apples. That's what local law enforcement is for. And frankly, if the president thought that the federal agents needed some more assistance, he could have sent federal law enforcement, marshals, FBI, DEA. The choice to not do that, but instead flood the zone with Marines and National Guard, is to intimidate protests that Donald Trump does not like. He's using this for political ends and to distract people's attention. We're writing the defense bill right now, and you can be sure that my colleagues and I will be offering proposals to dramatically limit the ability of a president to use the military like his own palace guard in the way that President Trump is doing now.
It strikes me that General John Kelly, Donald Trump's former chief of staff, took the extraordinary step for a general and a former chief of staff of going on the record in a recorded interview and warning the country of just this, of what Donald Trump might do to active duty military in terms of deployments on the streets of American cities. We are on the other side of that hinge point. That has already happened, but you represent a state that could very well have protests over the weekend. What have you learned from the last 48 hours in California that you can apply this weekend in Virginia?
Well, there will be peaceful protests in Virginia this weekend. There's sort of a No King's Day set of events all around the country on June 14. and there will be a number of Virginia cities where there will be peaceful protests. Look, the First Amendment to the Constitution, which a Virginian, James Madison, drafted, says that Americans are guaranteed the right to peacefully assemble and petition government for redress of grievances. That was put in the Constitution not just to protect individuals. It was put in there because there was a belief that candid and robust discussion of views, even dissenting views, would help American democracy function better. So the first thing I'm saying to all Virginians and all Americans is Donald Trump, through use of the military, may be trying to frighten you away from using your First Amendment rights. Don't let it work. We're coming up on the 250th anniversary of American democracy in 2026, and we need brave, patriotic Americans who will not just embrace but will act upon their constitutional rights. Peacefully assemble and petition government to fix what's going wrong. And under this administration, an awful lot is going wrong with the economy, with mistreatment of all kinds of people, and with using the military in this way. So I'm encouraging people to be active, be peaceful, but be active. We need brave patriots to be active right now.
Will you join the protests on Saturday?
I am likely to be at one of the many events in Virginia, but I have many to choose from, so I will not be able to be at all of them.
What are your private conversations with your fellow Democrats about how to make this a bipartisan group that is both concerned about and protective of the men and women of the military who seem to increasingly be political pawns at the disposal of Donald Trump without any sort of checks on his power? We know that Mark Milley and Mark Esper stopped Trump from doing this at Stephen Miller's suggestion during the protests in 2020. I want to play you Mark Esper talking about why that was a bad idea then.
The option to use active duty forces in a law enforcement role should only be used as a matter of last resort and only in the most urgent and dire of situations. We are not in one of those situations now.
So publicly, and we know from many books and articles that have been written, Mark Esper, Mark Milley, and others push back against people like Stephen Miller in 2020 to slow this down. It doesn't appear from the outside that there are many guardrails against Donald Trump using the military this time. And I wonder if there's an effort to gather a bipartisan coalition in the Senate to do just that.
Nicole, the opportunity we're going to have to do that is the defense bill that we are writing right now. We will likely finish work on the defense bill in the Senate Armed Services Committee in early July. And so we're in the run-up to it, and we will be offering amendments that everybody on the committee will have to vote for to try to put curbs in place so that the president cannot just willy-nilly deploy U.S. military against civilian protesters. I know some of my...
Y es que, señores, básicamente está diciendo que lo que está haciendo Trump con la Guardia Nacional y con los marines es algo ilegal, es algo peligroso, es algo sin precedentes. Pero bueno, vayamos más allá de lo obvio, ¿no? Porque creo que hay varios niveles de problemas aquí. Primero quiero que pensemos un poco en lo que es el contexto histórico. La Guardia Nacional existe precisamente para crearte un equilibrio de poder. O sea, es una colaboración entre el gobierno federal y los gobiernos estatales. O sea que cuando un presidente decide utilizar esta fuerza unilateralmente y encima ignorando a los gobernadores, ¿no? E incluso enfrentándose a ellos, ya se está rompiendo este equilibrio. Y eso no solo es un problema legal, es un problema democrático. Estamos hablando de un principio básico, ¿no? Nadie, ni siquiera el presidente, tiene que tener tanto poder sin rendir cuentas. Pero aquí viene un detalle muy preocupante, y es que Trump no está utilizando estas fuerzas militares para responder a una emergencia real, sino para intimidar a quienes protestan. ¿Por qué? Porque no le gustan esas protestas. O sea, ya esto ya no solo es un abuso de poder, ahora es un ataque directo a la primera enmienda de la Constitución. Recordemos, es la que te garantiza el derecho a la libertad de expresión, a la reunión. O sea, imagínense, soldados estadounidenses que juraron defender a la democracia están siendo utilizados como una herramienta política para poder silenciar voces disidentes. Esto no tendría que suceder en ningún país que se considere democracia funcional. Ahora bien, sé que algunos podrían argumentar, ¿no?, que si hay disturbios, entonces tiene como que sentido enviar refuerzos. Ok, tienes un buen punto, pero que hay un detalle. Tanto el gobernador de California como líderes locales han dicho claramente que las protestas en su mayoría fueron pacíficas. Incluso, ¿no?, se menciona que eso es trabajo de la policía local, no del ejército. Además, si realmente hubiera la necesidad del apoyo federal, ¿por qué no enviar agentes federales entrenados para manejar una situación de civiles, como el FBI o los Marshals? Usar marines y tropas activas ya es cruzar una línea muy, pero muy peligrosa. Lo que estamos viendo, señores, no solo es un mal uso del poder presidencial, es una amenaza directa a lo que es los cimientos mismos de la democracia. Yo creo que como ciudadanos nadie quiere quedarse, ¿no?, callado frente a esto. Por eso se tiene que apoyar este tipo de pensamiento, ¿no?, que hay que ejercer el derecho a la Constitución. Se puede protestar, se puede exigir transparencia, se puede exigir responsabilidad. Ahora bien, amigos, ¿qué opinan ustedes? ¿Creen que estamos exagerando o realmente estamos ante un peligro para la democracia? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Recuerda, como siempre, dale like, suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente Desacuerdo y comparte nuestro contenido. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.